Okay, so let's take a quick look at the application that we'll be building over the course of this series. So what we have is essentially a dashboard application where we'll have the ability to track and manage inventory and create customer invoices for a fictitious company called Solar Coffee. So the idea is that Solar Coffee buys and sells coffee beans. So we take raw coffee beans in as shipments, and then we roast the coffee beans, and then we sell them to our clients. So you can see here that we have on the inventory dashboard page a visualization of our inventory over time. So just kind of a simple line chart here. And underneath we have a table for our inventory. So we can see the various products that we sell, the quantity of each that we have on hand, their price, whether or not they're taxable, and we have the ability to delete or archive products directly from the dashboard. You can see also that we have some numbers here which are green, and then we have a number here which is yellow. So we'll look at how we can actually dynamically update the front end to change the color of the number for the quantity we have on hand if that number falls outside of a range of an ideal quantity that we have for the particular product that it corresponds to. So as I mentioned, we have the ability to receive shipments. So you can see that we'll have a modal here, and then we have a list of products that's pulling from our database, and then we can actually receive products. And you'll see that that will update our visualization here in real time. Likewise, we have the ability to add new products to our database from a separate modal. And we have the ability to manage customers. So we can add new customers to our database and then display them here. And then we have the ability to actually create new invoices for our customers. So this page will act as sort of a wizard for creating invoices. So in step 1, we can select a customer from our database. And then we can create the order in step 2. So we'll have a drop down for products here, and then we can start adding line items to an invoice that we'll build. So let's add a couple of items here. And you'll notice that if I add additional quantities to an existing line item, so for instance 30-pound light roast here, if I select that again and we have quantity 2, if I add another 2 to the order, it's just going to update that particular line item rather than add a duplicate line item for the order. So you can see we'll calculate a running total here as well, and then when we're ready to finalize the order, we can click finalize, and then we're taken to step 3 where we can see a sort of preview, if you will, of the invoice that we're about to create. And if that looks all good, then we can select submit invoice. And that's going to take us to our sales order page, and it's going to actually download the invoice automatically for us here. So we can see at the bottom of our orders, we have one unpaid order. I can open the invoice that we generated here as a PDF. So then I could theoretically send that as an email to the customer. And if I select the checkbox here, I can actually mark that order as paid in full. And I should note back on our inventory page, as customers make orders, that's also going to update the inventory that we have in our database. And so that as this process is going, as we're buying and selling coffee beans, we'll be able to actually monitor the inventory in our data. So I think it should be a lot of fun to build this app. We've got Vue.js running on the front end and a .NET Core web API handling our business logic, and the data is stored in a Postgres database. So let's take a look at the different parts of the stack that we'll need to actually install in our development environment to get started. So now let's talk about the stack that we'll be using to build our application. So we're going to be using .NET Core 3.1 to build the web API, which is going to act as the sort of business logic layer for our application. So .NET Core is cross-platform, so whether you're on Windows or Linux or Mac OS, just go ahead and follow the instructions for installing the .NET Core SDK in your development environment. So if you head over to .net.microsoft.com/download, you should be able to get that downloaded and set up pretty quickly. Next, as I mentioned, the front end is built in Vue.js, and I'm specifically going to be using a tool called the Vue CLI to create the project and to do various other things like run our unit tests. So if you head over to cli.vuejs.org, and get the Vue CLI set up in your development environment. Next, as I mentioned, our persistence layer is going to be handled by a Postgres database. And so if you head over to postgresql.org/download, you can follow the instructions for getting the Postgres database running on your development environment. So that's it in terms of our stack. In just a bit, I'll show you some commands that you can run just to verify that each of these things is set up properly on your machine. But first, let's talk briefly about the various IDEs or text editors that I'll be using throughout this series. So for the .NET side of things, I'm going to be using an IDE by JetBrains called Rider. It looks like a free trial for this. It is a paid app, and I use it both at work and for personal projects. It's a great IDE, but if you don't feel like paying for an app, then I would definitely recommend Visual Studio. It's really one of the only other options we have for building larger .NET projects. So go ahead and download Visual Studio if you prefer that. It's also available for Mac. And it would also be useful to download Visual Studio Code, which is a great lightweight editor that's really great for working in JavaScript projects and on Python projects and in various other languages. For the JavaScript side of things, the Vue app, for this tutorial, I'm going to be using another JetBrains product called WebStorm, which is another great IDE that's specifically tailored towards JavaScript. But again, Visual Studio Code is also a fantastic editor, and so I would recommend that as well if you're not using WebStorm. So now in terms of interacting with Postgres, I'm going to be using another JetBrains product called DataGrip to actually query the SQL database and do things like, run select statements and creating and updating tables if we need to. But there is another great free alternative called pgadmin, which I would also recommend for a sort of GUI to interact with any Postgres database. DataGrip is kind of nice in that it actually provides the ability to connect to lots of different types of databases. But pgadmin is specifically tailored for Postgres, and it provides a nice GUI to run queries and sort of visualize schemas. You can see that it can also sort of monitor performance and open connections to your Postgres server. So it's a fantastic tool for getting started in Postgres. There's also a utility called pSQL that you can download, which is a Postgres interactive terminal. It provides all the functionality you really need to interact with Postgres, but it's in a terminal environment, and so there's no GUI for it. We'll use pSQL a little bit in this tutorial as well. Although it's not strictly necessary that you have it, it will be necessary to either have a GUI or pSQL to execute a few of the commands that will be running in the series. Next, the terminal I'm using on macOS is iTerm2. It's a fantastic terminal emulator and a bit of improvement over the native terminal that's built into macOS. If you're on Windows, I would highly recommend checking out Commander. This is the console emulator that I use when I'm working on Windows machines. It's got nice syntax highlighting, and it also, I believe, is built on top of Git for Windows, or you can configure it to run with Git for Windows, and that sort of provides us with the ability to run Unix-style commands on Windows, which I happen to be more comfortable with. If you are a PowerShell user and are comfortable using PowerShell on Windows, then by all means, you should use PowerShell. Finally, we're going to use Git for version control in this series. I would definitely recommend using Git. It's not strictly necessary to follow along, but if you would like to back up your work and sort of track it over time in a version control system, then I would definitely recommend Git. And as well, signing up for an account on GitHub, which you can do for free, and then you can collaborate or share your work with others as you work through the tutorial. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get our project set up.